It was a foggy evening in early October when Mark decided to explore the abandoned Willowbrook Hospital, a crumbling structure on the outskirts of town. The hospital had been closed for decades after a series of mysterious deaths, and rumors of hauntings had made it a local legend. Mark, a paranormal enthusiast, had spent years chasing ghost stories, and this place promised both danger and the thrill of discovery. As he stepped through the rusted gates, the cold air seemed to thicken, carrying with it a damp, metallic scent. The fog swirled around his ankles, making the decaying grounds appear even more surreal. Broken wheelchairs and scattered medical charts littered the pathway, as if the hospital itself had been frozen in the chaos of its final day. Mark's flashlight flickered, the beam cutting through the gloom, revealing glimpses of shattered windows and peeling paint. He entered through the main doors, their hinges groaning in protest. Inside, the air was thick with dust and the faint odor of antiseptic mixed with decay. Each step echoed through the empty corridors, a lonely rhythm that seemed to follow him. Shadows danced along the walls, twisting in shapes that felt almost alive. Mark felt a chill brush his neck, but he pressed on, determined to capture evidence of the paranormal. The hospital felt like a labyrinth, corridors stretching endlessly, stairwells leading to darkened wings. He paused in the old waiting room where yellowed magazines lay scattered, their covers faded and unreadable. In the corner, a rusted gurney creaked as if moved by unseen hands. Mark's heartbeat quickened, but he steadied his breath, reminding himself that fear was part of the experience. As he ventured deeper, he began hearing whispers, indistinct at first, like the rustle of fabric or the hum of old machinery. But soon, they became more coherent, echoing through the halls with a chilling clarity. Names, numbers, pleas for help. Mark froze, straining to identify the source. The whispers seemed to circle him, weaving through the corridors, always just beyond the reach of his flashlight. He found himself drawn to the hospital's old morgue, a place marked by a coldness that seemed to pierce through his jacket and settle deep into his bones. The metal doors were half open, revealing rows of rusting gurneys and cabinets where bodies had once been stored. A single dim light flickered overhead, casting long shadows that twisted like living things. Mark's camera captured the scene, but the display revealed something that made his stomach churn. A dark figure standing in the far corner. Partially, the air grew colder, and Mark's breath became visible, a misty cloud that hung in the stillness. He wanted to call out, to ask if anyone was there, but the sound stuck in his throat. The figure didn't move, yet its presence was undeniable. A low, guttural moan reverberated through the morgue, shaking the dust from the ceiling. Mark's rational mind screamed to leave, but curiosity rooted him in place. A silent witness to whatever unseen force lingered in the shadows of Willowbrook Hospital. Mark's hands shook as he aimed his camera at the shadowy figure, but the device seemed to flicker in the dim light, capturing only fragments of movement. The moan grew louder, echoing off the cold concrete walls, reverberating like the sound of 1,000 anguished souls. He stepped closer, drawn by a mixture of fear and fascination, each footfall sending a shiver up his spine. The figure seemed to ripple, like smoke caught in a draft, its edges wavering and dissolving into the gloom. Mark could hear faint whispers now, urgent and overlapping, like multiple voices speaking at once. Leave, stay, help. The words twisted together in a chilling chorus that made his skin crawl. He felt the oppressive weight of the hospital pressing down on him, a sensation of being watched from every corner. Mark turned slowly, trying to find an exit, but the corridors seemed to shift. Doors that he was certain led to the stairwell now opened into empty rooms filled with shadows that moved independently of his flashlight. A sudden cold breeze swept through the morgue, extinguishing the faint light above. In the darkness, Mark glimpsed fleeting images, hands reaching from the walls, eyes glowing faintly in the corners, shapes that seemed both human and impossibly twisted. Panicking, he stumbled backward, tripping over the edge of a rusted gurney. The figure moved closer, though he couldn't see it clearly, only sensing the presence growing heavier, darker. The whispers became a chorus of accusations, of pain, of despair. Mark's rational mind tried to cling to logic, but the air itself seemed alive, pressing against him, guiding him deeper into the building. He found himself in the children's wing, a section of the hospital that had been abandoned for years. Faded murals of animals and cartoon characters adorned the cracked walls, now defaced by time and neglect. A small, broken music box played a warped, tinny version of a lullaby. The figure was there again, clearer now, a tall, indistinct form with hollow eyes that seemed to pull at the fairy light around it. Mark raised his camera instinctively, but the lens fogged over as the whispers turned into cries, piercing and desperate. Mark felt his body tremble uncontrollably. Shadows writhed along the walls, converging toward the figure, forming shapes that looked like the silhouettes of past patients, frozen in eternal torment. One of the shadows reached out, a skeletal hand brushing his shoulder. He gasped, spinning around, but there was nothing there, only the echo of his own fear, amplified by the oppressive weight of the hospital. Mark realized he had to get out. Every instinct screamed at him to flee, yet the hallways seemed endless, a labyrinth designed to trap the living. His flashlight flickered once more, revealing a door at the end of the corridor, slightly ajar, a faint light spilling from within. With no other option, he ran toward it, ignoring the whispers that now seemed to follow him, calling his name, pleading, warning. Reaching the door, he flung it open and tumbled into what appeared to be the hospital's old chapel. The room was empty, save for rows of broken pews and a shattered stained glass window. Light from the moon spilled through, casting fractured colors on the floor. The oppressive presence lifted slightly, as if the chapel's sacred space repelled the darkness. Mark sank to his knees, gasping for air, his heart pounding like a drum in his chest. Yet even as he caught his breath, he could feel the lingering eyes of Willowbrook upon him. The whispers faded but did not disappear entirely. A reminder that the hospital's spirits were never truly gone, only waiting, watching, and forever entwined with the decaying walls of their forgotten home. Mark stayed in the chapel, trying to calm himself, but the sense of being observed never left. The moonlight seemed to pulse, casting shadows that moved independently of his own movements. Every sound, the creak of the old pews, the whisper of wind through the broken windows, felt amplified, like the building itself was alive and breathing. He thought he saw a figure at the far end of the chapel, a pale silhouette that glimmered unnaturally in the moonlight. It didn't move like a human, but drifted, gliding just above the floor. Mark froze, heart hammering. The whispers returned, louder now, more insistent. You shouldn't be here. Leave. Join us. Suddenly, the temperature dropped drastically. Frost formed on the edges of the shattered glass, and Mark could see his breath hanging in the air. The figure raised what seemed like an arm, or perhaps a tendril of shadow, and pointed directly at him. The whispers turned into screams, deafening, overlapping voices of children, adults, and something inhuman. He stumbled backward, desperate to escape, but his legs felt like lead, rooted to the cold stone floor. Mark's flashlight flickered violently and went out. Darkness swallowed in completely, and the oppressive presence pressed closer, like a living weight. He could feel the air itself resisting his movements, trying to pull him down, to trap him. In a panic, he fumbled with his camera, hoping its light or recording could somehow give him an anchor to reality. Then, a sharp, piercing shriek split the air. It was not just a sound, but a physical blow, knocking him to his knees. The figure hovered above him, taller and more menacing than ever, its hollow eyes fixed on him. Shadows surged from every corner, converging into the entity, like dark rivers flowing toward a single point. Mark felt his sanity fraying. Fear clawed at him, threatening to consume his very mind. In a desperate act, he pointed the camera directly at the figure and pressed record. The lens glowed faintly, capturing the silhouette and somehow creating a barrier. It burst through the doors and ran blindly into the night, the cold air hitting him like a wall. Behind him, the hospital loomed silently, its windows like empty eyes watching him flee. The whispers and cries faded, but never fully disappeared, echoing in his mind long after he left Willowbrook behind. Mark finally reached his car, hands trembling as he fumbled for the keys. Every instinct screamed to leave, to never look back. As he drove away, the hospital grew smaller in the distance, yet in the rearview mirror, he thought he saw a shadow watching him from one of the broken windows, still waiting, still hungry for the living. Mark drove for what felt like hours, the empty roads of Willowbrook stretching endlessly before him. Every shadow seemed alive, every distant sound echoing with the whispers from the hospital. His hands gripped the steering wheel so tightly that his knuckles ached. Yet he dared not. Finally, he reached the small apartment on the outskirts of the city. The familiar surroundings should have offered comfort, but the moment he stepped inside, he realized the sense of being watched had followed him. The camera in his bag, still recording, seemed heavier than ever, as if it carried the residual energy from the hospital. Over the next few days, Mark reviewed the footage obsessively. On the screen, the figure appeared clearer than ever, its hollow eyes piercing through the darkness. The shadows around it seemed to move with intent, forming shapes that were almost human. Almost, but not quite. He could hear faint whispers, pleading, warning, sometimes screaming. Each playback left him more drained, more paranoid. Sleep became impossible. Every creak of his apartment, every flicker of the lights made him jump. He tried to explain it to friends, but their laughter and disbelief only deepened his isolation. He began to notice subtle things, objects slightly out of place, shadows that lingered too long, reflections that didn't match reality. Then one night, while reviewing the footage again, Mark saw something he hadn't noticed before. In the reflection of the camera lens, a dark figure stood behind him in his apartment, eyes glowing faintly, waiting. He spun around, but the room was empty. His apartment was silent, seemingly normal. But the dread, the palpable weight of that presence confirmed what he feared. It had followed him. Mark realized that some doors, once opened, could never truly be closed. The hospital in Willowbrook had marked him, connected him to the shadows in a way that no distance could sever. He turned off the camera, dropped it to the floor, and whispered a silent plea for protection. The shadows in the corners of the room shifted, and for a brief moment, he thought he saw the figure recede. only to vanish into darkness with a promise that it was not gone forever. Mark never returned to the hospital, but the memories, the whispers, and the chilling presence remained. He had survived, yet the encounter had changed him, leaving a permanent scar on his mind, a reminder that some places are never truly empty, and some stories never truly end.